All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at Windlas Biotech Ltd.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you gave me a ton of their Q2 FY25 reports, like investor presentations,
Hmm.
balance sheets, cash flow statements.
Not really going all out, huh?
Well, you seem really interested in how this company's doing, so we'll try to get a good sense of that. For anyone new to Windlas Biotech, they're a big player in the Indian pharmaceutical scene. They specialize in those generic drugs, making medicine more affordable.
The folks behind the scenes, the ones making it all happen.
Exactly. But it gets even cooler.
Oh,
They don't just cook up formulas for other companies. They have their own line of generic drugs that they sell themselves. And get this, they're even selling them overseas.
wow, smart move. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right. Spreading the risk, tapping into different markets. And guess what? It looks like it's working. Their revenue has been climbing steadily for the past 7 quarters, like setting new records each time.
7 quarters in a row. That's impressive. Especially in the pharmaceutical world. It's a tough industry.
It is. And consider this, the Indian pharmaceutical market itself hasn't been growing that much.
Really?
Just 8% growth in Q2. And the actual volume of medicine sold, a measly 0.4% increase.
Wow. So the market is pretty stagnant then.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Windlas, they're crushing it.
What do you mean?
Their Q2 FY25 revenue hit 187 crores. That's a 22% jump compared to last year.
Okay, hold on. When you say volume, you mean the actual number of pills and all that, right? Like how much medicine they're actually moving.
Exactly. So even though people aren't necessarily buying a lot more medicine overall, Windlas is bringing in way more revenue.
So they're doing something right.
For sure. The question is, what? Are they jacking up prices, selling way more products, or both?
Okay, let's break it down by their different business areas. It might be clearer then.
Good idea.
There's CDMO business, where they make drugs for other companies. That's still their biggest moneymaker. About 73% of their revenue in Q2. And even that grew. A respectable 19% in the first half of FY25. But here's the interesting part.
I'm listening.
Their trade generics and institutional sales, that's where they're selling their own generic drugs. Remember, those sales exploded.
Exploded. Like how much?
The whopping 48% year on year for the quarter.
Wow, that's huge. Looks like they're really onto something with their own generics. What about their sales abroad? Are those doing well too?
Yeah, definitely. It's still a smaller part of their business, only about 5% of their revenue, but it grew a lot, 35% year on year for the quarter.
So they're growing in all areas, diversifying, expanding. Pretty impressive. But are they actually, making money? Profit matters, right?
Of course. Translate into profit. And you know what? Windlas is doing well on that front too. Their EBITDA, which basically tells you how profitable their core operations are, is up 23% year on year. They made 23 crores in Q2 and a total of 44 crores for the first half of the year.
So they're profitable. Okay, that's good. But didn't they sink a bunch of money into a new facility? What was it, an injectables plant? I'm curious how that's impacting their bottom line.
Yeah, that's right. Their new injectables facility, Plant 5, they call it, it's a major investment. But even with that expense, their profit after tax, the money they actually keep after all the bills are paid, still grew. It reached 15.6 crores in Q2 and 29 crores for the first half of the year. That's a solid 12% growth year on year.
So even with this new plant not bringing in any revenue yet, they're still turning a decent profit.
Exactly. They're managing their money well, especially considering how much they're expanding.
Impressive. So tell me more about this new facility. What's the big plan with this injectables thing anyway?
Well, it's not just about making more stuff. It's about getting into a whole new market. Injectables.
Injectables, huh? That sounds like a big jump.
It is, but it's a fast-growing market, and Windlas wants in.
Okay, I see the potential there.
Okay.
But isn't that a bit risky too? Injectables are a whole different ballgame, aren't they?
Sure, there's always some risk, but the payoff could be huge. They're basically taking what they already know about generic drugs and applying it to this new market. Injectables are crucial for a lot of things. Critical care, chronic conditions, the demand is always there.
So steady demand. And since they're sticking with generics, they can keep the prices lower.
Exactly. More people can afford them. It's a win-win.
Okay, I'm following you. But let's be realistic. What could go wrong? What obstacles could they run into?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is regulations.
Yeah.
The pharmaceutical industry is heavily regulated, and injectables, even more so.
Makes sense. People inject stuff directly into their bodies. Got to be extra careful.
Right. So Windlas has to make sure this new facility meets all the standards. quality and safety, both in India and anywhere else they want to sell these injectables.
A lot of hoops to jump through, approvals, certifications.
Yep, it's a long process, but they have a pretty good track record. They've gotten approvals and certifications before from lots of places, including big companies and even international ones.
So they've done it before. That's reassuring. But what about competition? There are some big players in the pharmaceutical industry. How can Windlas compete, especially with these new injectables?
Competition is tough, no doubt. But Windlas has a few advantages. One is their focus on what are called complex generics.
Complex generic.
These aren't your everyday generic drugs. They're trickier to develop and manufacture. But that also means less competition and higher profit.
So they're going for the niche market. Clever.
Exactly. They're using their CDMO experience to their advantage. They've already been working with complex formulations, so they have the know-how and the technology to tackle these more challenging generics.
It's all connected now. Okay, this is all interesting stuff, but let's talk about the elephant in the room, the economy. Things are pretty shaky right now, and it's affecting everyone.
Yeah.
How is Windlas prepared for all that?
That's a good question. You see, Windlas knows that it can't rely only on India. They need to spread out. Remember their export business. That's part of their plan to reduce their dependence on just one market.
So they're diversifying geographically.
Exactly. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket. And you know what else helps? Their focus on affordable medicine.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, when the economy is bad, people look for cheaper options, especially for healthcare. And Windlas is ready to provide that.
So a bad economy could actually be good for them.
In a way, yeah. People need affordable healthcare, and Windlas is there to offer it. Plus, they're in a strong financial position. Remember, they have 200 crores in cash.
Right. They have some breathing room if things get rough. So it seems like they've got a lot going for them.
They do. They're growing, they're expanding, they're financially sound, but it's a dynamic industry.
Things change quickly.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how they adapt and keep moving forward.
It's a bit like they're on an adventure, navigating all these opportunities and challenges.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about reaching the final destination. It's about the whole journey.
And I guess our listeners are part of that journey too. They get to see how this all plays out. What do you think? What stood out to you so far? What parts of Windlas's story are you most curious about?
Good questions. I think it's time to let our listeners mull that over while we gather our final thoughts.
When we come back, we'll zoom out and talk about what all this means for Windlas's future. All right, we're back. Ready to wrap up our look at Windlas Biotech? We've covered a lot. Their financials, their strategy, even some potential challenges.
It's been fascinating to see how they're growing and innovating and how they're navigating this complex market.
So big picture time. What does all this mean for their future?
Well, I think they're in a good position. They have a strong track record, their finances look good, and they have a clear vision for the future. Their strategy is smart, too, getting into injectables, focusing on those complex generics.
They're not just reacting, they're taking charge.
Exactly. They're not just following the trends, they're setting them. And their commitment to research, that's huge in this industry.
You got to keep innovating to stay ahead.
Exactly. And Windlas gets that. But of course, there are always those external factors, like the global economy or regulatory changes.
It's the stuff you can't control.
Right. Those are always wild cards. But it seems like Windlas is trying to minimize the risk. Expanding their export business helps. Less dependence on just one market. And their focus on affordability, that could actually benefit them in a tough economy.
People will be looking to save money, especially on healthcare.
Exactly. So some of these challenges might actually help them in the long run.
It's amazing how these different factors can come into play.
It is. And that's why analyzing businesses like this is so interesting. There's no way to predict the future with certainty. But we can get a good sense of their potential by looking at their strategies, their strengths, and the bigger picture.
And that's what we've tried to do today. Give you the information to make your own informed decision about Windlas Biotech.
We've talked about their successes, their challenges, but ultimately we've probably left you with more questions than answers.
Because a good deep dive should spark your curiosity, encourage you to explore more.
Exactly. The best insights are the ones we uncover ourselves.
So keep digging, keep asking questions, stay curious about Windlas Biotech and the world of pharmaceuticals.
There's always more to learn.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic to explore. Until then, stay curious.